Hello everybody, Andrew Field here. There's so many issues I want to cover, so I'm just going to go right into the first story. First story is about India and how badly it is being hit by COVID right now. As of May 3rd, it recorded 300,000 new cases for the 12th straight day. The country's infection at that point was 20 million. Now it is 23 million, I think, as of today. It hit 400,000 daily infections on the 3rd. As of yesterday, it reported 329,000 daily cases of COVID, over 3,000 deaths in one day. Prime Minister Modi's government has been receiving criticism, obviously, over its pandemic handling. States like New Delhi imposed independent lockdowns, but there has been no national lockdown as of yet. Dr. Fauci said a temporary shutdown is necessary. It's surprising because India has done so well, and now when it seems like it's gotten so much better in other countries, they are having a huge breakout of COVID-19, which is obviously a very bad thing. The US, UK, Australia, Canada, Germany, New Zealand all imposed travel restrictions on India, um, and then some more broad numbers. Hopefully, I really hope India can get their COVID-19 situation under control. I know the US and other countries are helping them out, which is important. Today, the total worldwide COVID-19 case number, that means of all time, of how COVID-19 has been 160 million cases diagnosed and 3.3 million deaths. Just wanted to update you on the total numbers that we've gone through this whole time. And 137 million recovered, which is a really good thing. That means out of the 160 million people that got diagnosed with COVID, 137 have recovered. So that means the other people either died or did not recover because they just got COVID. The daily worldwide case number is very bad right now. The information I'm using is from worldometers.info. It's a really great site that has been tracking this whole COVID pandemic on a world scale, and I think I've mentioned that before. Like I was saying, the worldwide case number per day is very bad because on January 7th, the world case number was 843,000 cases in a day, which is very bad. And then in February 22nd, it was down to 287 total cases in a day worldwide. And then May 7th, it went back up to 842,000 cases. And I think the majority of that is because of India spiking. And also on May 7th, the worldwide daily death counter was 13,000, which is a very high mark. For a long period, fairly long period of the month of February and the month of March, the COVID numbers were very low compared to what they were in January in terms of case number and death count. I think a big part of that was the United States solving its act in COVID. It's gotten much better. But now with India, it's going right back up. So, not a good sign. I wanted to point out with the country of Iran, their daily case number yesterday was 18,000 with 350 deaths. So I think that's pretty high. It seems like they have a pretty big COVID infection rate right now. Because comparing that with what the U.S., seems like Iran's not handling it that well. I mean that because in Brazil yesterday they reported 29,000 cases, and if you remember, a while ago Brazil was the one that was spiking. Now they reported 29,000 cases, so much better. And the U.S. reported 30,000 cases yesterday, which was much better off than India and much better off than we were in January when we were the country that was reporting about 300,000 cases a day. Now we reported 30,000 cases, so much better. Good news with LA County. I think they've been bad with COVID for a while. The report came out today that said they could see herd immunity by July. And also really great news, the FDA expanded authorization of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine to include children ages 12 through 15. So now children 12 through 15, well, it's been authorized, but soon people 12 through 15 years old will be able to get the vaccine. There was a situation that happened in Colombia where 19 were killed in pandemic-related protests. The demonstrations were over a proposal tax overhaul, which Colombia's president withdrew. It was a controversial tax hike that was very disliked, obviously, with the people of Colombia. So they protested over it. There was a bit of violence, sadly, but in the end, the protesters got what they wanted, and Colombia took the offer down, which is very good. There's been a major situation with Israel lately. I know a lot of people think, yeah, the Middle East is always having conflict. The conflict, if you know, between the Israelis and the Palestinians have been going on for a very long time. And there's always seeming to be a conflict in the Middle East, but it's never a good thing. And it seems like there's a pretty bad conflict going on right now. Because Israel struck Gaza. There's been rocket attacks on both sides. After Gaza fired at Jerusalem, the Gaza Health Ministry a couple days ago said 9 Palestinians were killed. The fight is between Israel and Palestinian militants in Gaza. The sirens went off in Israel and violence has escalated today. The update I saw from an hour ago were over 30 people killed and over 300 people injured from the rocket attacks from both sides. The reporters say that it's the worst fighting between the Israelis and the Palestinians in 7 years, since 2014. And the source of the conflict, as much as I understand it, has been from Israeli forces using rubber bullet-tipped bullets, tear gas, and stun grenades, wounding hundreds of Palestinians during the Muslim month of Ramadan. I hope I said that correctly. The Palestinian families were also being evicted from their homes by Jewish settlers. So there were the two things going on. The Jewish settlers were trying to kick out Palestinian families from their homes, and then also there was hundreds of Palestinians that were injured protesting during their Muslim month of Ramadan. So because of that, the militant group Hamas has been fighting with the Israeli government, or the Israeli military, I should say, and civilians have been impacted as well. There's two groups that want to benefit from this. The first is a militant group, Hamas, because they want to claim that they're protecting the Palestinian protesters. And the Israeli prime minister, who has not gotten control of his government for a little while, Benjamin Netanyahu, is benefiting to being kept in power, because at the point where he was now, or before the violence happened, he didn't have control of the government. So because he wasn't able to form his own government, the opposition parties were going to talk and see if they could unite and form their government, and if they could, then they'd kick him out of power. But now that this conflict's going on, it just disperses everything and helps him. The White House expressed serious concerns about the situation, saying it is being closely monitored. Now, I think it's a good response, obviously, that they express concern about what's going on and that they want to see what's going on. But I think, honestly, they need to say more. I think they could try and reach peace. The U.S. is pretty close with Israel. I'm not exactly sure why we are. I don't think we should be. I guess it's to get a hold on the Middle East and all the conflict that's going on in the Middle East. But Israel, it seems like, as of right now, I don't know about the past conflicts, but from what I've been reading about this conflict now, it seems like Israel has been moving into this area that the Palestinians are in, and like I was saying, are kicking out families and they just seem to be pressuring more and more to the Palestinians and treating them poorly. And it's like if there was a box and you keep pressing and pressing on the box, eventually, stuff's going to pop out. There's going to be some sort of conflict. People are not going to just accept being belittled and not being treated fairly forever. And that's what seems to have happened, that the Israelis did not seem to care much on the Palestinians and their rights. And so they, treated them poorly for a while, and now the Palestinian militant group, the Hamas, are fighting them. And it seems to be a deadly conflict right now. So I think the U.S. is maybe one of the best countries right now that could. I don't want the U.S. to be involved militarily. I'm just explaining that the U.S. could possibly try and meet with leaders of both sides, because the U.S. is pretty close with Israel, and I think they could also lend a hand to the Palestinians, especially with how we see human rights and freedom and everything like that. So I think we could try, at least, not saying it'd work, but we could try some sort of peace agreement. I think we could get involved, but we shouldn't want to get involved militarily. I don't think that's the right decision, but if we could try and get peace there before it gets too much out of control, and try and push back a little bit on Israel, just say, hey, this isn't really right, we can work it out, we can, mark territory and whatever solutions. An article pointed out that Biden ran in 2020 believing that Palestinians and Israelis should have equal freedom and democracy. So I think trying to negotiate a peace deal would go along with that. There was a situation a couple days ago where 3 people, 2 women and a 4-year-old, were shot in Times Square. Nobody was in custody, and the injuries were non-threatening, which is very good. And they all 3 were unintended targets. So I think what I read was there were 2 people arguing, and someone pulled out a gun and I guess started shooting, and ended up shooting 3 civilians in the process, which is very unfortunate, but I'm glad to hear that no one was at risk of death. Their injuries were non-fatal. But a very unfortunate situation, obviously. At least 30 people were killed and 52 were wounded in a blast near a girls' school from an explosion in Afghanistan, the capital of Kabul. I know this is a lot of sad news that I am reporting, but that did happen recently in Afghanistan. It was near a girls' school, and it's bad enough when a lot of violence is going on, but to hear a lot of it happen near schools and with children, it's really disheartening, obviously. A metro overpass collapsed in Mexico City, which killed 23 people and injured 70 others. And, thoughts to the families of these people who were victims of, in some cases it's been violence, but in the overpass collapsing, it's just really bad luck. A lot of unfortunate events. The U.S. intelligence report warned that Afghanistan women's rights are at risk after U.S. troop withdrawal, which makes sense. The U.S. has been in the Middle East fighting for, I'm pretty sure, over 20 years now. Yeah, over 20 years, and I think we really should try to leave at all costs, and I really support the President Biden's decision to go ahead and say that he's leaving by September 11th of this year. I just, we can try our best to, make a democratic system and try and support them from the outside by sending aid and money and such, but I don't think our troops should be there. There's no Osama bin Laden there. There's no, there's obviously terrorists there. That's why we're there. But It's always a risk leaving, but I just don't think it's worth having all those troops there right now. So I think it's the right call. I think we can monitor the area without having troop presence there. Let's just say that. There was a big cyber attack that forced a major U.S. pipeline to shut down, the Colonial Pipeline. Just to tell you how big this pipeline is, it transports 100 million gallons of gasoline and other fuel daily from Houston to New York. It supplies 40% of the East Coast. It's 5,500 miles long. Very scary to hear, obviously. This happened a few days ago. A Russian hack group did the deed because obviously it's a Russian group. It always is a Russian hacking group that commits these horrible acts. I think we definitely need to address it now that we know it's a Russian hack group and hold Russia accountable for that because it's very devastating. The Biden administration said last month they were working to strengthen cybersecurity for the nation's power grid. From the cyber attack, people are panic buying, worrying if there's going to be enough gas, and because they are panic buying, it's causing massive gas shortages on the eastern part of the United States. The White House says there should be no concern from running out of gasoline, but I think the panic buying is what's causing a loss of gasoline. So the government's trying to work it out, but it is a very big situation that we're dealing with right now. In other news, a Russian spy unit is suspected of directing energy attacks on U.S. personnel in Havana. I think that was a couple years ago that people were suffering mysterious health effects after going to Havana, and they weren't sure what it was. I think the article was saying that it couldn't pinpoint the evidence exactly on the Russian spy unit, but I guess they gathered enough intel that it lets them to believe that the Russian spy unit was what caused that in Havana. There was another situation near Iran. A U.S. ship fired 30 warning shots at Iranian speedboats in the Strait of Hormuz. The video footage was from the end of April, but it just came out recently, and it's very frightening because there's I think it was 2 U.S. ships in the strait, and the problem is these speedboats seemed like they want the U.S. ships to provoke an attack, so they can cause violence and have a reason to cause violence. So they were getting really close to the U.S. ships. They were giving them verbal warnings. They were getting closer, so they fired warning shots, and then they ended up going away. I mean, I saw the video. Those boats were really small. There's no way they'd be able to take out the ship. They just want to provoke violence, I think. But it was good of the U.S. Navy to go ahead and fire warning shots to get the boats to leave without having to actually gun them down, which they probably would have if they didn't stop. Biden said he'd raise the refugee cap from 15,000 to 62,500 of the amount of refugees who can be admitted to the U.S. through September. Prosecutors seek the death penalty and hate crime charges against the Atlanta spa shooting suspect. That came out today. Trump's Justice Department secretly obtained Washington Post reporters' phone numbers. Russian leader Putin ordered new gun restrictions following a school shooting that killed 11 people. Children jumped out of the windows to escape the shooting. In total, it was 7 students, 2 staffers, and 2 students who died from the fall. The gunman used an assault rifle in the city of Kazan. It was a 19-year-old suspect. Now, I saw some reports that there may have been a second shooter, but the report I was specifically looking at was just talked about the 19-year-old suspect. So there may have been a second shooter that would have been arrested or killed, but some sources seem to mention, some didn't. But I know for a fact that there was a 19-year-old suspect that was arrested by Russian police. The suspect posted on social media that he wanted to kill people shortly before the school shooting happened. The school was set to celebrate Victory Day in World War II, from World War II. So Putin went ahead and restricted civilian access to semi-automatic weapons. Gun ownership laws, by the way, are much tighter in Russia than they are in the United States. And it was after one mass shooting that Putin decided to restrict assault rifles to civilians. So I think the U.S. needs to catch up with that. Our gun violence numbers are way worse than Russia, so I think it should be fairly easy to at least put some restrictions on assault rifles to Americans for them to get it, and implement easy things like background checks to make sure people who are mentally not there can get an assault rifle and go ahead and shoot a bunch of people. I think it's pretty simple, but the NRA is pretty powerful. Speaking of the NRA, hopefully they get disbanded, and there's a chance they might because the judge dismissed the NRA's bankruptcy petition, which means they are no longer protected with the bankruptcy protections, and it allows the New York Attorney General to move forward with their investigation of the NRA and their fraud, because they definitely are full of fraud. Another big story was that Bill Gates, Microsoft billionaire, and Melinda Gates have officially divorced. Reports then came out that Melinda Gates began looking at divorce at the time that it was revealed that Bill Gates met with Jeffrey Epstein in 2019. So that means 2 years ago she was looking for divorce, and then 2 years later they ended up divorcing. It's a big deal because Bill Gates, I think it said, was the fourth richest person in the U.S. So yeah, pretty crazy. I think they had the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation that offered a bunch of great causes. So I wonder what's going to happen with that. But I guess we'll have to see. Excuse me. Republican Liz Cheney is soon to be removed from House GOP conference chair by the Republican Party. Representative, one of the few Republicans I actually like, Adam Kinzinger, defended Liz Cheney solely for condemning he defended Liz Cheney, and he was saying the reason why they're going to remove her from her position is solely for condemning President Trump's illegal actions of the U.S. Capitol insurrection, because she voted to impeach the president, which was totally the right move, by the way. Kinzinger said McCarthy, the House Minority Republican leader, dismissed warnings of GOP rhetoric, which led to the January 6th violence. Doing this, which they're planning on doing tomorrow, just shows that Republican Party is just a party of a cult. And it's not really good for American politics because it's convincing tens of millions of people these crazy things. Between QAnon and just following Trump, it's not really a full party, which is not good for American politics. And the Democrats are probably going to, well, they're definitely the dominant party right now, but yeah, I don't know what the Republican Party's plan is right now, because I don't know, they're probably going to lose a lot more people than anybody they would gain. So I don't know their strategy. But anyways, I'm really glad for Adam Kinzinger to step up and say the right thing. So that's the news I have for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Peace.